Okay, today we're doing something a little different. We're going to connect two things you probably never thought belonged in the same sentence: advanced English grammar and global data privacy law. I know it sounds a bit out there, but trust me, there's a specific turn of phrase that perfectly explains why getting used to new rules like the GDPR feels so weird. Let's get into it. So, right off the bat, here's the big question: what on earth does grammar have to do with these huge, complicated regulations? Well, it turns out the way we talk about new habits or the struggle to form them gives us the perfect lens to understand what companies, employees, and even you and I are going through in this new world of data privacy. And to really get why this new era feels so unfamiliar, we first have to remember the world we were all used to. For a long, long time, it was kind of the Wild West, right? The default setting for our personal data was just share. Companies scooped it up, we handed it over, and nobody really asked too many questions. It was just how the internet worked. That was the habit, the norm we all got very, very used to. And then a couple of massive new rule books showed up and completely flipped the script. What's wild when you look at this timeline is just how recent all this is. I mean, we're not talking about ancient history. The GDPR really kicked things into high gear in 2018. Then California's CCPA followed just 2 years later, and it was expanded just last year. This is a massive global shift that's happened in the blink of an eye. The GDPR was the earthquake. Now, it's an EU law, but here's the kicker: its reach is global. If your company is in, say, Texas, but you have data on a customer in Germany, you have to play by GDPR's rules. The whole point is to give people back control over their own data. And right on the heels of the GDPR, you have California with the CCPA. Now, you might think, oh, it's just one state. But because California's economy is so huge, it basically sets the standard for the rest of the US. It gives Californians really specific, powerful rights over their data. So, what are we actually talking about here? This table lays it out perfectly. You can see the parallels. Both laws give you the power to tell a company, hey, delete my data, or tell me everything you have on me. The names might be a little different. GDPR's right to be forgotten is the famous one, but the core idea is exactly the same, putting you back in the driver's seat. Okay, so we've got the old habits and we've got the new rules. And that brings us right to the heart of this whole thing, the grammar that perfectly captures that feeling of friction, of those growing pains. And here it is. This is our magic phrase: not to be used to doing something. It's the exact structure we use in English when a new behavior just hasn't clicked yet, when it still feels clunky, difficult, and, well, just plain unfamiliar. And that is so key. This isn't about being unable to do something. It's about the discomfort of learning. It's that feeling of breaking a lazy old habit and trying to force a new, more deliberate one. It's the perfect description for an entire industry that's learning a new language of compliance. All right, let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. I promise, once you see this pattern, you'll start noticing this feeling of unfamiliarity absolutely everywhere. So think about it. You've got a lawyer who spent 2 decades working under the old lax rules. Now they have to navigate this incredibly dense new legal world. They know the law, sure, but the day-to-day muscle memory, it's just not there yet. They are not used to working this way. And this goes all the way down the line. A new hire in marketing, for instance, suddenly has to document every single time they handle customer data. It's this whole new layer of work that feels totally unnatural at first because they're simply not used to doing it. And this feeling extends outside the company walls too. For years, we were the ones who were used to just clicking agree on anything. But now, after all the big data breaches, we're a lot more skeptical. We are not used to trusting companies with our information so easily anymore. That old habit is broken. And finally, the one we can probably all relate to, the internal friction. New security software, new two-factor authentication for everything. It's all crucial for compliance, but man, does it mess up your workflow. The team gets why they have to do it, but they are not used to working with all the extra steps. Not yet, anyway. You know, part of what makes this all so hard is that we're trying to get used to rules that are still being actively debated. The ground is literally shifting under our feet as we speak. So let's take a look at one of the most famous and most controversial parts of the GDPR, the right to be forgotten. Is this a fundamental human right in the digital age, or does it maybe go a little too far? The arguments here are really strong on both sides. On one hand, supporters say it's the ultimate tool for controlling your own story online. But on the other hand, critics bring up really valid points about freedom of speech and the public's right to know. Not to mention, how do you actually delete something from the internet forever? It's a huge technical nightmare. There are no easy answers here. So, how do we get past this uncomfortable phase? How do we go from not being used to it to this new way just being normal? Well, here is a very, very powerful motivator. 4%. Under GDPR, that's the maximum fine a company can get, and it's based on their global annual revenue. For a tech giant, that can mean billions of dollars. Let me tell you, nothing helps you get used to a new habit faster than a multi-billion-dollar penalty. This slide really brings our whole journey together. We started in a world where we were used to sharing everything. Right now, we're in this awkward present where we are not used to all this strict compliance. But the goal, the destination, is a future where privacy is the default, where it's the new habit that we all are used to. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. We're all struggling to adapt to the privacy rules of today. But with things like AI and biometrics exploding, the world is changing all over again. So, what new, unfamiliar things are we all going to have to get used to next?